about Addison Nichols, the third-rated center/guard in the country, depending on your service. That's the composite top 100 player out of Georgia. Whether that we expect him to make a decision soon.
Yeah, I think a decision is going to be coming soon. I don't have a date in front of me on there, but he has a top three of Ohio State, Tennessee, and North Carolina. I tend to think Tennessee might be the team that's ahead, but nothing would really surprise me on that one. But Ohio State's certainly pursuing guys like Ernest Green, Cam Dewberry. Already has a couple of linemen in the class with Tagovailoa, as well as George Fitzpatrick. So, you get down to a final three when you're pretty close. And you also look at Addison Nichols. He has taken his official to Ohio State, did not official either of the other two schools. Nothing would surprise me. Ohio State recruits the greater Atlanta area so well. He certainly had a great visit to Columbus, but if I were to put in a future cast at this point, it would probably be to Tennessee.
That's probably where I would lean as well on this. And I know that at least one of the experts in our network has picked Tennessee as well. This is kind of an interesting thing. And in my chat this week, I was asked, is Greg Studrawa on shaky ground because they haven't recruited a top flight, offensive lineman. And we were going to discuss that they just got the commitment. Was it George Kirkpatrick? Is that his name? Fitzpatrick. Thank you for correcting me. Don't have it in front of me. I should have made a note of it before we came on here. I didn't write about it this week because we had other people on our staff that did. And I apologize to George, but from Colorado. And he's only like 250 or 260 in the composite, probably a 3-star, maybe a low 4-star player, whatever he may be. And my response was, and this was in my chat that I do on Mondays on Bucknuts. I said, he just sent 2 players, Wyatt Davis and Josh Myers, to the NFL. He's going to send 2 more, Thayer Munford and Nicholas Petit-Frere, you would figure, will leave after this upcoming season. And they'll go to the NFL. And he did get Paris Johnson, who was a national top 10 player a couple of years out of Cincinnati, and he may start this season. And they got Donovan Jackson out of the state of Texas, who was a national top 10 prospect as well. So, you can't come to me and say, why doesn't Stud get the best guys when in 2 of the last 3 classes, Ohio State has signed a national top 10 player. They also signed 4 or 5 offensive linemen in one class here recently, and another 4 or 5 another year. They've got like 17 offensive linemen on scholarship. There's plenty of depth. Tony on here a few weeks ago said the only thing that troubles him about the offensive line is knowing who's going to start at left tackle next season. That's the only question he has, because every other position this season and next season is pretty much spoken for. The only question is if Nicholas Petit-Frere does decide to leave and you have to replace both tackles, where are you left? So I think Greg Studrawa on the whole, and you set offensive records because your offensive line's pretty good. And the last 3 years with him as the offensive line coach, they've set some outrageous records for points and yards and passing yards and ran the football effectively and, all these other things. I mean, some outrageous numbers that are going to be hard. I don't think they're going to match some of the numbers that they've had in the past this year just because they have a new quarterback. But I think that to come at me and say, they don't have a top 100 offensive line recruit in this class is kind of myopic. I think you can't see the forest for the trees, in my opinion.
A couple thoughts there. One, we look at this year's class, and Tagovailoa, he's, according to Rivals, is number 136. Cam Dewberry is a 5-star. Ernest Green is a 5-star. I think that part of the issue that Stud runs into is he is a victim of Ohio State's recruiting success at so many other positions. When you look at Larry Johnson bringing in, depending on which service you are, where Jack Sawyer was and where JT Tuimoloau was, you have that. You have Brian Hartline in the receiver room going in and just going crazy in terms of his recruiting. More years than not, Ohio State's defensive back recruiting is completely off the charts. So you have all these positions that may be tops in the nation in their given classes, and maybe Stud hasn't necessarily had a class to where he's put 2 or 3 of those top 50 guys, whether or not 2 or 3 of them are necessarily available, because Ohio State hasn't been able to go into Alabama or Mississippi or some of these states and be able to recruit with any great frequency. But, you look at certain positions to where he's just not necessarily had that class. And I think a lot of people, too, are still holding Jackson Carman against him, having an Ohioan disappear like that. Another Ohioan's going to Clemson, another young guy. So it's a lot easier to focus on the ones that you don't get versus the ones that you do get. So I think some of the criticism of Stud is probably just bad messaging. But, there have been a couple misses along the way. But you know what? I think if you sit there and you put Greg Sturara in another Big Ten program and he lands the same kids without the backdrop of Larry Johnson, Brian Hartline, whatever, he's up for top recruiter of the year at his school.
Yeah, and Kerry Combs is picking up that ball again in the secondary. He's going to be getting top 50 and top 100 guys, it looks like. Running back, obviously, to get Travion Henderson was huge. And at quarterback, what they are doing at quarterback, I'm not sure Corey Dennis is getting the credit he deserves with the quarterbacks they've landed, although most people would look at that and say, well, it's Ryan Day. But certainly all these guys are carrying their weight, carrying their water and doing their share, it looks to me.